Hey, hello to everybody in all three sections of human development. So welcome here. This is the review I said I would try to do for your midterm. I'm gonna just go into on all three sections. If this is not yours, it works the same way. Go into where you can find the study guide for midterm 1 through 6. I'm going to go through the questions, and I don't mind taking a little bit of time for these. So let me go through them. Maybe there are actually 2 attempts. Haha! It should say 2. I changed it to 2 attempts due to some conversations with students just saying, it just makes sense. You can do as well as you can if you have 2 attempts, and if somebody closes down your exam when you're taking it, and then it spares you and I from having really terrible runaround trying to get each other at the same place. Although I feel like I would help you quickly, but one never knows, right? So this way you have 2 attempts. Use them to go do better. The highest attempt will be saved, so no worries about that. Okay. I guess I'm not going to change it on here. I don't think I will, unless I remember later. But so just think yourself, there's 2 attempts. I don't want to have a makeup exam. You take this exam. If you miss it and the window closes, there'll be about 48 hours at the very end of the class where I'll open it back up for you, but all at the same time. Sorry, and the same for everybody in the class. So if we could work that out, unless you want to really tell me that you have an extraordinary situation, and I will listen to you, and maybe we would work out something. But if you miss it, you need to take this and the final and the post-test all at the same time. That doesn't sound fun. All right, so plasticity versus stability. Generally, we think about the brain for this, that the brain has plasticity, especially when you're young, if there's some neural damage. Another part of your brain kind of says, so to speak, hey, it's okay. We can specialize this other set of neurons to take on the, motor development or memory or so on and so forth. As we age certainly past our 20 or 25, there's much slower regeneration of brain cells, as you know. But you can also think of stability and plasticity having more emotional aspects, if you will. So are you going to be flexible and get through life and maybe have some rough patches, but are you able to move on? That's a type of plasticity. But then you could think of something like IQ, that we would want IQ to have a stability and not be constantly plastic. Wouldn't it be terrifying to wake up with a random IQ every day? Yes, I don't think I would like that. That would be scary. Okay. Darwin's theory and child development theory diary. You can kind of look at that. This is just letting you know, and so you learn that Charles Darwin is sort of really the father of developmental psychology, so to speak, because he kept a diary about his children. And just as if he was taking notes on a bird or a tortoise, he took notes on his kids. And he really delighted in his kids because he was an incredible observer of life. And there's a click there that you can look at. Id, ego, superego. Again, when I'm teaching, I want people to associate theory and have the person come in your mind. So we're thinking Freud. The id is unconscious about your needs and desires. And the other side is a superego, which has to do with your guilt, your sense of right and wrong, your kind of gnawing sense that maybe you should have done something differently. And then the ego is sort of the conscious part that can have glimpses of the super ego, like, oh, I know I always feel bad when this happens because my dad always yelled at me about this. And you have to just the ego has to kind of cope with the id. It doesn't have a language, the id, but it has impulses, right? Impulses of aggression and to seek out food, to seek out pleasurable activities. Social learning theory, Bandura, you learn through imitation. Operant conditioning, Skinner, you learn through rewards and punishments. Classical conditioning, Pavlov, the guy with the dog, where we do associative learning. I learned to associate the bell with the food that's about to be served to me. Piaget's theory, the first two stages, which is sensor motor. So we talked about sensor motor, where you use literally your sensory system to take in information about the world. So playing with water, playing with blocks, making things noisy, making things jingly, putting things into your mouth, all being a way that you are forming knowledge about the world. You're not thinking about it, you're doing things. The second stage of Piaget is pre-operational, and we talked about it in class in terms of having symbolic learning, the start of language, the start of words, the start of pretend play. Accommodation and assimilation, I think with the quiz question we went over, or the Kahoot question we did, had to do with adaptation. So both accommodation and assimilation are of the schema. The schema is a way of knowing, a cognitive structure about how something works. So if I have a way of knowing of how to play, oh, sorry, I'm sorry, a cognitive structure of how to play ukulele, right? Sorry. So if I needed to learn how to play, if I needed to play guitar, I might pick up a guitar and play it like a ukulele. I have a schema of playing a stringed instrument, but I don't know how to play the guitar, and I don't know how to play it. I would probably only know how to use this only 4 strings on this darn ukulele. How is that going to help me learn how to play a 6-string instrument? But I would attempt it like a 4-string. So I would assimilate, sorry, my schema onto a guitar, and eventually I would accommodate the way I did my fingering and my strumming for the guitar, and I would adapt. All right, observational learning, again, Bandura, you're going to watch a behavior, a child's going to think about a behavior, they're going to memorize the behavior, and maybe they would replicate the behavior later. We'll talk more about that as we go on in the course, but that's why that's there, because there's a chapter about theory, obviously. Correlation, experimental design, look those over, and basically the mantra, as you know, is I'm going to lose battery. Where is my charger? Should we go for a walk? Let's go for a walk and get my charger. Correlation is the mantra is that, where is my charger? Hold on, take you a little voyage here. Causation is not implied through correlation, only through experimental design. All right, I think I can do this. I think I can turn this light on and sit here and talk with you and plug in my computer. Hold on. Hold on. Here we go. Yeah, why mess around, right? Okay, so you're going to have, I'm not going to start this video over. You're going to sit here with me, and we're going to look at these clouds and a television as I bend over to get my charger, because it popped right off, of course. Okay, here we are. I think it's better that you could see me, so I hope it was worth that effort. Experimental design, look at that. Again, you have 2 conditions. The independent variable is introduced, and the dependent variable is what is measured. So if you have 2 conditions that are the same and you introduce an independent variable, did you in fact make anything change? Did anyone's behavior change or attitude change? And that is what we call, experimental design. We talked about Fragile X syndrome in class the other day. It's on the Kahoot, but I'm not starting over. I refuse. I'm going to go down here. I'm going to pick this back up again, and I'm going to plug this in, and I'm going to sit still. Fragile X is a part on the X chromosome that does not have complete instructions for protein building, and that causes brain abnormalities. Down syndrome is trisomy 21. It's the extra chromosome on the 21st set. There's 3 instead of 2. This thing about eating dinner with parents on development, this is, again, data that has been everywhere and now is being a little bit challenged. But the idea was that if you ate dinner with your family, that you would in fact have great outcomes, better grades, less dropout, more people moving on to college. So we're going to keep with that data until we see it really definitively changed. Well, the corpus luteum is a little cyst that forms on the ovary after the egg has popped out, and it produces hormones telling the reproductive system that potentially that there could in fact be a pregnancy and to keep the uterine lining intact until that message changes, if in fact there's not an implantation, which is from the 7th to 9th day, as we know from the Kahoot quiz. You can look at the physical structures of uterus, embryo, and fallopian tube. What time is implantation? I just said it's 7 to 9 days. Vernix is this sticky white substance, very waxy white substance that's on newborn skin, and it's there to keep their skin from getting chapped from being inside and like rubbing and moving inside the amniotic sac with the amniotic fluid. Problems taking aspirin while pregnant, that's on that Kahoot quiz, but you have lower IQ and you have birth weight issues, and you can take a look at that link. 80% of the time medicine is used, and that's pain medicine. If you don't want to use that, you would stay out of the hospital if you had a safe pregnancy until you felt like that your water broke, or you're calling in and they're telling you certain contraction speeds, or it's time for you to go into the hospital. So 80% is quite high, I think. Infants and toddlers grow in little spurts. How is development measured using a skeleton? Well, you could see in a hand x-ray where the bone is and if there's growth plates or cartilage still there. And there's a really good estimate for how old somebody is. We looked at these neurons and the parts. You drew them on the whiteboard. So if you didn't go to that lecture, you could look at that video. And I want you to know what the cell body is, and the nucleus, the dendrites, the axon, the terminal buds, and know that what end the neurotransmitters come out of. The lobes of the brain. So you have the frontal lobe, and you have the occipital lobe, the parietal lobe, and the temporal lobe. And you can go into the PowerPoints there, and I want you just to look at that brain and familiarize yourself again with the different lobes. Romanian orphan data, that was the stuff that we talked about with having high cortisol levels and also having emotional issues such as attachment disorders. And again, these are studies of kids that were in Romanian orphanages a while ago. It's not current, although I'm not going to tell you that there aren't orphanages around the world where children are just more or less neglected. They don't develop in a way that leads them to have, really healthy emotional relationships later in their life. All right. Sensitive adult care is this idea that you're matching the baby where the baby is at. So if a baby is we talked about this a little bit in class, but has an easy temperament and you are a difficult temperament, that's a tough match. But your kind of role as an adult is to, take a baby that's easygoing and help them be comfortable with themselves. That's being sensitive. If a baby is clingy, to, work with their clinginess. We talked about learning to like oneself through other people liking who we are. Trust versus mistrust, autonomy versus shame and doubt. So those are the first 2 stages of Erickson. And you have feelings of trust versus mistrust. I think you have like a year and a half. I mean, it kind of ends at 2, trust versus mistrust. But a lot of those a lot of that growth. In other words, some children are going to enter autonomy versus shame and doubt, which has to do with somewhat about ability to walk and to walk away from situations. A little bit about 18 months of being able to have a will and a self, right? So you can't really have autonomy until you have a sense of self. So those two stages are important components of one another. There's a slide with the basic emotions of infancy, but happiness, and fear and disgust. And there's one more, you can kind of look that up easily. What age you begin self-conscious emotions? That's 18 months. What is meant by effortful control of emotions by children? I think if I was to just kind of act it out, I would say things like, well, when a child looks at you and they need to cry about something, but maybe you're in a situation that you want them to kind of keep control of their emotions, and you can kind of look and just say, just wait a minute, we're going to talk about this. And they sort of kind of like, you do it yourself because you can control your emotions. So, but teaching and learning and reinforcing this skill is important so they can function across a lot of different places in their life, waiting until later to feel upset or cry. We don't want to be too controlling over emotions and feelings either. So, but I think you understand that the developmental milestone of what we're talking about. Chess and Thomas say the different types of temperament. That's easy, difficult, and slow to warm up. And temperament is stable, but not really stable until you're about, they say if you want to have a good shot at knowing what someone's going to be like, you look at them when they're 4. So there's just a low to moderate prediction of temperament when someone's little or before the age of 3 or 4. Goodness of fit is again about, it could have to do with parenting or cousining or brother and sistering. Some people just get along better than other people. So if a child's very active, you want to be very active with them. If a child is kind of reserved and shy, it's okay to kind of meet them of where they are at. It's kind of similar to what we talked about in a couple of points up. Social smile begins, I think the PowerPoint slide said from 6 to 10 weeks. And the social smile is not just those neurological washes that happen in newborns. They're not random, but are related to the inner world. And I said you might see them a little earlier, but the PowerPoint slide says 6 to 10 weeks. And laughter reflects an increased cognitive awareness over smiling. Laughing is an indicator of a faster speed of processing of information. We even do that as a grown-up. If you're not sure what's going on, you might smile, but if you really get it, you might laugh at a situation. Or maybe you're smiling and everybody else is laughing and you're saying, I don't get it. So it works, the same principle works. I'm not saying that we're slow, I'm just saying we didn't get it. But in infancy to toddlerhood, that shift from just a gooey smile to giggling at something shows a little bit of a greater awareness of the meaning of a situation, a little bit of speed of processing is a little bit faster. I hope that makes sense. Okay, there are some questions on the exam that are based entirely on the lectures that we had in class. So for example, just to give you a heads up, one of them is about the marshmallow study with the guy that's not from the United States, not Walter Mischel talking, but the demo with the little child with the sniffing the marshmallow. So there's a question about that. There's a question about a couple of the other little videos that I did show in class. So if you were in class, I think you're going to be fine. You don't have to backtrack. If you had missed in class, I do want you to try to look at the video so you can pick up some of those points there. Okay, I hope this is helpful. I'm sorry I had to walk around. I am glad you got to see what I call the Cloud Studio, and I hope that this was a good experience for you. I try to do it fast because it's hard to know the exact speed, but I do know that these are going to help you with your exam. Your midterm, yes. All right, thanks, bye.